A long, long time ago, when the mountains shared memories and the trees could speak, there lived a king, a queen, a prince, and a very, very angry wizard. This wizard lived high up in a mystical tower and was tediously working on his next magic potion for the king. You see, the Royal Highness was having trouble commanding his little soldier to attention, and this was affecting his relationship with the queen. To remedy his flaccid salute, the king reached out to the angry wizard for a magical solution. Now the wizard had been working day and night when suddenly, far below him, a little voice disturbed his concentration. "Excuse me, Mr. Wizard," the voice spoke out. "I'd like to know if you could help me find my pet rock." "Pet rock?" the wizard proclaimed. "Who could be bothering me right now with such an idiotic proposal?" The angry wizard poked his head out the window and looked down to see a dirty young boy holding a small brown box above his head. "My pet rock was right here all night," the boy explained, "and then this morning it was gone." At this point the wizard was furious and thought to himself, "What kind of country bumpkin is stupid enough to interrupt me with such a trivial matter?" "Be gone!" proclaimed the wizard, "or else I shall turn you into a fat, frumpy toad." "A fat, frumpy what?" cried the boy. "Please, sir, that rock is my most prized possession. I must get it back." Now, usually the wizard would light the boy's pants on fire and be done with it, but today this angry wizard was particularly angry because the powerful magic potion he was making was only missing one ingredient. He had been tediously searching for this item for weeks, to no avail, and time was running out. You see, the other ingredients in this potion were beginning to lose their magical properties, and without the catalyst being added within time, all of his hard work would be for nothing. Not only would this be a major blow to the wizard's ego, but the king had already paid him a hefty commission for the potion's success. All of this stress boiled to rage, and the wizard stuck his long, pointy finger out the window towards the boy. "Hauk-tuah!" proclaimed the wizard, and a bright green bolt sprung from his fingertip and spiraled violently into the boy. At once the boy was morphed into a fat, frumpy toad, just as the wizard had promised. Quipped the wizard. "That ought to teach him." The very next morning, with his new pet toad hanging in a cage beside his laboratory, the wizard felt quite proud of himself. "Stupid boy," he said to the toad, "now you get to witness firsthand the greatness of which you intervened." The toad rolled his eyes and watched with interest as the wizard began testing the different ingredients for the king's potion. The wizard tried everything: goblin's warts, troll hairs, raven claws, and wolf whiskers, but nothing seemed to work. The toad let out a ribbit that sounded like a chuckle. The wizard scowled and reached for his top shelf. A werewolf's claw extracted during a full moon and a bundle of phoenix feathers were amongst his best ingredients. He had hoped to save these for a better occasion, but time was running out. If the king couldn't command his Willy to attention soon, wars would begin, and the land would turn to chaos. Now the wizard loved his fair share of chaos, just as any real wizard does, but the ancient Grump enjoyed his peace and quiet even more. War would only bring more sniveling peasants to his door, asking him to save their lives. The phoenix feathers will have to do. Just as he was about to toss one in his cauldron, another small voice rang out from below. "Mr. Wizard!" yelled the queen. "I need your attention at once!" "Oh, pish-posh!" the wizard growled. He couldn't bully the queen like he could the peasant boy, so he would have to play this one smart. "Ahem! Yes, my queen!" the wizard coyly called down from a window in his tower. The queen looked up at him and responded, "This matter is extremely important. I'm looking for my son, the prince. He left the palace yesterday complaining that he had lost his pet rock. The silly boy hasn't come home yet, and I fear the worst." The wizard shuddered and turned to lock eyes with the toad in the cage. His heart sank to the bottom of his chest. The wizard had gotten himself into plenty of scandals. throughout his ancient life, but turning a prince into a pet toad was a first. Someone had to have seen the prince on the way to my tower, the wizard pondered. It's only a matter of time until the king and queen find out. How could he talk himself out of this one? The answer was simple, he realized. He couldn't. "Hauk toi!" the wizard bellowed, casting yet another green lightning bolt from his fingertip. Before the queen could react, she was struck with the wizard's spell, morphing her into a stubby, fluffy sheep. "Merlin, help me!" He would have to keep the queen and prince locked in his tower until he succeeded with the king's potion. Once he returned the king's vitality, perhaps the royal family would forgive this unfortunate misunderstanding. Until then, he would have to remain focused. The wizard returned to his laboratory and promptly dropped a phoenix feather into the cauldron. The magic liquid let out a hiss like the quenching of hot steel. The wizard examined his new concoction. Almost every property checked out, however. The potion continued to bubble as if it was still boiling. Nothing in his book of alchemy mentioned a vitality potion behaving this way, although every other quality was in alignment with the ancient tome's suggestions. His only choice was to test it on someone. But who? A mischievous grin crept onto his face. "Chaz will do." The wizard let out a devious chuckle, bottled the potion, and left the tower. After pushing through the swinging doors of the Rye Wench, the wizard was met with a resounding hush. The ruffians who frequented the tavern knew better than to stare, and almost on cue they reluctantly grumbled and turned back to their drinks. The wizard found Chaz leaning up against the bar, mug in hand, downing what was surely his 20th beer of the day. "Wizzy, my dear French, it's good to see ye outside your tower." Yes, Chaz," replied the wizard. "I'm here to present you with an offer. In my pocket I have a new potion I've created that will grow your manlyhood to the likes of which you've never seen. Every wench will want you, and every other clodhopper in this place will want to be you." Chaz's eyes rolled around in his head, almost as if he was thinking. "I know nothing either free with you, Wizzy. What's the catch?" The wizard cringed. "It's the first one I've made. I need to see you drink it so I can study the results." Chaz narrowed his eyes suspiciously. "Is this your way of telling me you're a gay wizzy?" The wizard promptly slapped Chaz across the face, forcing him to brace against the bar. "Will you do it or not?" Chaz took a second to recompose himself, wondered if he even had a choice in the matter, and nodded. The wizard guided the drunkard out behind the Rye Wench for their little experiment. The unlikely pair had caught the attention of the peasants in the tavern, so by now a curious crowd was gathered. The wizard reached in his cloak and handed the bubbling potion to his companion. "Bottoms up, my friend." Chaz downed the whole thing in one gulp. A sobering look spread across the drunkard's face, and his ears began to smoke. Sure enough, the peasant's pitchfork began to lift his breeches. Just as the wizard felt relieved that his concoction was complete, Chaz's crotch spontaneously combusted. The entire crowd burst into laughter. The wizard winced as Chaz rolled around on the ground, clutching his family jewels. His potion nearly worked, but the phoenix feathers were too powerful. He couldn't risk giving this to the king. The wizard flicked his fingers, and the fire on Chaz's groin was extinguished. He didn't have time to pity the poor fellow. He had a queen and prince locked in his tower, and undoubtedly the flaccid king was starting to wonder where they were. The wizard opened a portal home, shrugged at Chaz, and stepped through, leaving his test subject writhing in pain, while the peasants continued to point and laugh. Back in his laboratory, the wizard impatiently sifted through his books, searching for a solution. Just as he landed on a page about magic turtles and the vigorous properties of their shells, a powerful voice rang out from below. "Master Wizard, your king demands an audience at once." The angry wizard growled under his breath and trudged to the window. What a coincidence, my king. I feel I've almost solved your little problem. As important as that matter is, the king nervously looked down. That is not why I'm here. 2 days ago, my son went missing in search of his magic pet turtle. The silly boy named him Rock, if that matters. The wizard looked over at the sheep and toad he had stashed in his laboratory and then backed down towards the king. Magic turtle, you say? Perhaps if we find the turtle, we'll find your son, though it won't be easy. The king looked relieved. Exactly my thoughts. If you find him, I'll double your reward. The wizard asked the king to give him some time to prepare a locating spell for the prince's pet. As soon as the king left the tower, the wizard turned his royal prisoners back into their true forms. The queen went ballistic, cursing and breaking all manner of trinkets in the wizard's tower. The wizard ignored her, and before she could destroy the place, he took the prince's small wooden box and used its scent to locate his pet Rock. The boy couldn't believe his eyes. In no time, the wizard had teleported his pet turtle directly into his hands. "Rock! I've missed you!" Hearing her son's happy voice pacified the queen, and she curiously looked over at the tiny turtle walking across her son's fingers. The wizard was also curious because this little turtle looked exactly like the species listed in his book of vitality ingredients. If his hunch was correct, the oil underneath the turtle's shell was the final ingredient for the king's potion, and it was with the boy all along. The wizard regretfully looked at the queen. "I believe I've finally found the solution to your husband's problem." As angry as the queen was, she couldn't deny the importance of the potion, and she allowed the wizard to swab the turtle shell and drop the oil into his cauldron. The liquid hissed and let out a small plume of smoke. The solution looked stabilized. Unable to waste any more time, the wizard would have to trust his newest concoction and give it directly to the king. If it worked, perhaps the king would look past this little fiasco. The queen, prince, and wizard made their way back to the royal palace. The king was overjoyed to see the trio and immediately offered praise to the wizard, but a nasty look from the queen cut him short. "Where have you all been? I was about to turn the kingdom inside out looking for you." "Why don't you ask your little wizard?" spat the queen. Before the king could inquire further, the wizard displayed the gleaming vitality potion in front of his eyes as if he were trying to hypnotize him, and it worked. Seeing the magical solution to all of his troubles, the king grabbed the potion and his wife and sped up the stairs to the royal bedroom. The prince looked up at the wizard, confused at his parents' strange reaction. The wizard looked down at the boy, grinned, and gave him some advice. If the king can't command the royal willy, then he certainly can't command the royal kingdom. So the one that gives the king the power to command the royal willy is even more powerful than the king himself.